Welcome to the LDN radio show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsiegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. I'd like to introduce my guest Sandy from the United States, who takes LDN for chronic fatigue syndrome, which started with Epstein Barr virus. Thank you for joining us today, Sandy.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, tell us your story. When did you find you'd got the Epstein Barr virus? How old were you?
It was in 2018, and I was 58, actually, and I was working full-time. I'm a public school speech therapist, and I was working full-time, and I was just dragging. I had gotten to a point where Friday would come along, and I felt like I was just limping into the weekend, and I would say to my husband, I feel so sick at the end of every week, and I would even ask him, do I have a fever? You know, I'm achy. I just don't feel well. And I didn't have a fever, but I just never felt well. And I would kind of regain my composure over the weekend. And come 2018 of July, I had retired. And after 34 years of being a public school speech therapist, which I loved, and so I retired, and I was very ill. But my primary care physician said I was fine. So I had learned about an integrative practitioner from a friend of mine, and so I made an appointment to go see her. And when I met with her, she just kept shaking her head, and she goes, I know what's going on, but I'm not going to say anything until we go through the comprehensive blood panel that I'm going to have you do. And so it was a couple of weeks later that I met with her, and we met for over an hour. And she said the report was glaring to her as far as the number of viruses that I had active in my body. And they were more like childhood viruses. But the Epstein Barr virus was very, very high. And she said it was all under the umbrella of the HHV6 panel, and it was all antibodies that were tested. And she said it was so glaring to her that she was wondering how I was standing. Mm. And I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. And she said typically when she comes across numbers that were high like that, you know, the IgG and the IgM numbers, she said I would hospitalize people, but I can tell that I don't need to hospitalize you for whatever reason. You know, you're pretty strong, but she said you're ill with the Epstein Barr virus is the overriding virus. And I also had the Coxsackie virus that was very high. I'm going through my notes right here. I had the parvovirus. I had mycoplasma pneumonia, the CMV, cytomegalovirus, that were very, very active in my body. Mm. So it was multiple things, and she said, no wonder you feel so fatigued. And so I obviously had them previously, but they had reactivated. And the number one virus that was causing most havoc in my body was the Epstein Barr virus. I had mono when I was 21 years old. And I had it very bad. And it was between semesters in college, and my doctor wanted me to stay home. And I managed to get him to agree with me to let me go back to school part-time the second semester. And I had pneumonia as well. And I was very, very weak. And the virus stayed in my body for months afterwards, even though I was functioning. Mm-hmm. So that is it in a nutshell. And I also found out that I have the MTHFR gene. Um, so with all of that, my body was in chronic pain. It wasn't as bad where, if I touched my body, I was like, don't touch me. It wasn't like that. It was just a chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia-like pain.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I know exactly what we need to do to get rid of these viruses, but the number one medication that I'm going to prescribe is called LDN. And I had never heard of it except from my friend who had recommended me to call this integrative practitioner. And she said, I found a wonder drug. You have to call this person. And she did not have LDN or the Epstein Barr virus. She had something else, but she was, frantically trying to find out what could help her.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I found out, and I was fatigued. I mean, it was beyond. I slept and I slept. Once I found out what I had, I just slept because I knew I could, and I had retired. Mm-hmm. And she said, this couldn't have come at a better time for you. So now you can pay attention to yourself and take care of yourself. Brilliant. And that's my story in a nutshell. So it's been since 2018, I've been on the LDN. Mm-hmm. I started at the 2.5 level, and then I went up to 4.5, and I'm up to 9, which is where I've been for the last year and a half.
And how long did it take before you noticed improvements?
I noticed right away, but I knew it wasn't. She said, "Well, I need to know what the pain level is at." So I still had pain, but mm-hmm. it was decreasing, and mm-hmm. each time that I elevated the dosage. I stayed at 4.5 for a while, and I can't tell you how long that was. It was months, but all of a sudden, it had to increase, and I was working, so I think the stress level was a factor too.
Mm-hmm. And did mm-hmm. you change your diet and take a regime of supplements?
Yes, I take other supplements as well. Yes, vitamin C, vitamin D3. I take 5,000 units. I take 2,000 units of vitamin C daily. I take digestive enzymes, and I take Methylguard, which is by the Thorne Company, and it's for the MTHFR gene. It's for folate. And I also take an ashwagandha type of stress relief supplement for my body. And I take 5-HTP as well for serotonin. And I just recently had my neurotransmitter panel tested, so I'm waiting for results because I'm pretty sure that the serotonin levels in my body are very low.
Right.
So.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to rate your quality of life on a score of 1 to 10 prior to starting LDN, what would it have been?
Oh, it was like a 3.
And what
2 or 3. Mm-hmm. It was low. Prior to LDN, yeah, it was low.
Yeah. And what would you say it is now?
I'm definitely between an 8 and a 10.
Mm-hmm. So when I said about diet, I mean, do you follow any particular diet to help yourself? I mean, are you gluten-free, dairy-free, processed sugar-free or anything?
I went gluten-free immediate. I had been gluten-free prior to that because of chronic IBS issues I was having. Mm-hmm. And so going to another naturopathic doctor, he had suggested that I become gluten-free right away just for overall inflammation reasons. And it's helped a lot. I do have IBS, though, so I deal with some recurrent issues of that. But I mainly follow a Mediterranean-type diet. I've tried all different types, but I feel like the Mediterranean best fits my needs. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So
that's
what, we just eat as whole as possible. Mm-hmm.
So what's a typical day for you like now? Because, I mean, you were describing how you were dragging yourself around to do anything. What's it like today when you get up in the morning? How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. I don't have the pain. I don't have any pain in my body at all. So, I do also deal with some depression and anxiety that I've dealt with for many, many years, and have seasonal allergy type symptoms. And so this season, the spring season, is the worst for me because of a tree allergy that I have. So, I do have that stuff, but it's not like it keeps me down. I really, as far as the pain factor, I am 100% pain free.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get up and do whatever I want to do. It doesn't hold me back.
And has LDN helped with your IBS symptoms and your allergies?
I don't know if it has, because I still deal with IBS issues and allergies.
Okay.
So I can't say that it has.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say to other people who are in that position you were in before you found your doctor who prescribed the LDN, who feel lost and alone? What would be your advice to them?
My first advice is to find an integrative practitioner and or a naturopathic doctor and talk with them about LDN, because I feel that LDN will and has taken care of the inflammation in my body and the pain. And I would recommend it to anybody who's fighting a chronic illness that especially their doctor is saying they can't help them, or this is all we have to offer you. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that a primary care physician or a medical doctor will recommend LDN from my experience. And even the literature that I've read, there aren't many medical practitioners, medical doctors that will prescribe it. My doctor didn't even know about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we have many MDs that are prescribing LDN and consultants, gastroenterologists, dermatologists, oncologists, urologists. But as you pointed out, that isn't the norm. But a lot of Western style doctors, if you like, have gone on to do integrative medicine as well as a adjunct to what they're already doing, which is, really helpful. So how you are today, which sounds really, really amazing, has your doctor retested you for anything to find out what your levels are now, or wasn't that necessary?
Yes, I'm negative. I test negative for the Epstein Barr virus.
And what about the other infections you had, viruses you had?
I'm sorry? Can you say that again,
the other
please?
Viruses that you had, have they gone as well?
Yes, they have.
Fantastic.
Yeah, everything's dormant.
And how long did that take to get to that state?
It took me a year and a half to get there.
And how did you feel while you were doing the treatment? Did it have a negative effect on you with the viruses dying off?
No, I didn't feel that at all. I was so sick. I felt I was constantly fighting some negative feeling that as soon as I started to fully rest, and I honestly didn't know what that meant because I was just going all the time. And I had been single parenting for 7 years as well. I had gone through a divorce, and I was on high G all the time. And my job was very, it was an anxiety-driven type of job. I brought my work home with me. I was constantly moving and having to get something accomplished and done. I was always on deadlines. I think so that hanging over my head for as many years as it did, it, caused my whole immune system to become very weakened, and I was sick a lot. Mm-hmm. And I had chronic headaches along with migraines. And not to mention the fact I was in a state of perimenopause and menopause to add all that to it.
Absolute amazing story, and thank you very much for sharing it with us today.
I mean, I would recommend LDN to anybody who is in chronic pain. I mean, that's the first thing I would mention to somebody. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really has saved my life in terms of my daily lifestyle. So
amazing.
I appreciate you having me.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure other people who are in your position will find it very inspirational. So I thank you. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.